It's Sunday, January 3rd, 2016, the first Reel in the Field Goals of the new year, 2016. This is Reel in the Field Goals, the instant reaction podcast, coming a little less instant today, but for good reason, as we preview the Seahawks playoff game as well as review their win over the Arizona Cardinals, 36-6, coming up next Sunday at 10 a.m. Pacific time in Minnesota. It's the Seahawks trying to win a playoff game for the fourth straight year, 5 out of the last 6 years under Pete Carroll, this time against the Vikings, the team they beat 38-7 on December 6th, 2015. And I am Kenneth Arthur, as always, with Danny Kelly of fieldgoals.com. We come every single week after the game. We'll see how many more instant reaction shows we get to do this year. We hope that it's 4, but we'll take at least a couple more. And Danny, you saw... We'll get to Minnesota and talk about them for a bit, but, you know, we talked about the Arizona Cardinals last week a little bit. I think that we weren't necessarily thinking a whole lot about wins and losses because the Seahawks playoff fate was so far out of their hands, and to some degree, a win pretty much just eliminated Green Bay as a possibility, and a loss, you know, could have changed the landscape a little bit, but I think that, you know, most people had Arizona winning this game. They were 6.5-point favorites. And I think the most recently, I know that I said on 3000 NFL mock draft last week that I called Rob Staten and Jackson Bevins traitors for not picking the Seahawks to beat the Cardinals. I picked the Seahawks to beat the Cardinals, and they win 36-6. I know that you're not surprised that they won the game, but in the fashion that they won the game, I'm sure that you're surprised, but in retrospect, did it feel a little bit familiar?
Okay, so I'm not like surprised about it because, like I said before, you know, I thought that the Seahawks would, you know, are a team that can beat the Cardinals. I did pick the Cardinals to win. It's actually kind of funny because the Seahawks went into this game. That was the biggest spread since I think 2012. So that was the biggest point spread in 3 years, which is kind of crazy to think about. And then the Seahawks obviously beat them by 30 points. So I don't think I expected them to be as dominant as they were. I considered, and I talked to Jackson about this in our Deep Balls podcast and in the Cigar Thoughts podcast. I think that Arizona coming into this week was the best team in the NFL. It still could be. Obviously, they didn't play Carson Palmer in the second half, so, you know, they kind of gave up at halftime. But, yeah, I mean, I think this was a huge, huge win for the Seahawks. They completely dominated what I thought was the best team in the NFL. So, yeah, I mean, that's something that's really good, obviously.
Yeah, as far as final lines go, you know, in the box score, Arizona fans can't claim that the Cardinals weren't trying their hardest. This was a game that was 30-6 at halftime.
They threw in the towel. They threw in the towel at halftime.
Right. It was 30-6. The Panthers were beating the Bucs. That was all but done. So even any sort of comeback attempt, feeble as it may have been, they just weren't going to risk Carson Palmer. Right. Drew Stanton comes in, goes 8 for 18 for 84 yards, 2 interceptions. No dances from Drew Stanton this week. Funny enough,
for that dance though.
I think, yeah, I mean, it was a good dance. All due respect to Drew Stanton for doing something that was fun for everyone, but you know, no dancing today. Yeah, you know, the funny thing too is I think early in the game, myself, I know I've seen some tweets from you tweeting about some of the mistakes made by Deshaun Shedd, including the first touchdown to Larry Fitzgerald, or the only touchdown.
I don't know if that was. I don't know if that was.
I mean, he may have been pulled off, but it just looks bad.
It looked terrible. Yeah.
Not that like, oh, that makes him look bad, but when you just watch the play as it is, you just see it, and it's just funny how he's total. It's that one guy, and nobody's covering him. Maybe someone should have been over top, but it just looked bad. And then totally just reaching out for an interception or a ball that he had no chance of intercepting. He deflects it, changes the trajectory for Jeremy Lane. That being said, down here in LA, where Deshaun Shedd went to Palmdale High School, I was just watching after the game on NBC. They mentioned that Deshaun Shedd was the hometown hero of the day for his interception of Drew Stanton. So good.
Well, yeah, he did have a pick. That's good.
Yeah,
the one touchdown. To me, that looked like it was just the perfect call against the Seahawks defense in that case. I think Shedd's responsibility in that play was to buzz the flats or whatever. So you see the linebackers do this sometimes, and he came up as the strong safety on, or he was, I guess he's playing corner. I'd have to look at it again, obviously, because I didn't really get a great look at it. But it looked like his job was to, you know, basically run back into his zone I don't know if he's supposed to carry Larry Fitzgerald further up or what. Like maybe that was his mistake, but it obviously looked terrible. But overall, I just think the Seahawks had a really bad scheme there for what the Cardinals were doing. So that was terrible. And that's kind of the thing. I mean, that's what the Seahawks have given up all year, that seam route, where Earl Thomas has to come over and basically pick that up, and it's always late. So that's always, that's kind of annoying. But overall, I thought the Seahawks defense was completely dominant. They gave up how many yards. It was something really pathetic from the team that has been leading the NFL in yards per game. So
yeah, and points. And the Cardinals in the first meeting in Seattle put up 22 points in the second quarter alone on the Seahawks. Yeah. Today, just a one touchdown, missed extra point. Obviously, even if it was just for a half, in the second half, it was a different ball game. But at the same time, like we said, it was already heading into blowout direction with Carson Palmer in the game. It's Carson Palmer's worst game of the season. Sort of puts her, and they do this stuff without Cam Chancellor now for the last two games. He's not there today. He seemed like the only player that Pete Carroll was non-committal about in the post game. As far as guys that were out today that could be back next week, do you feel any sort of sense of Cam Chancellor's health as far as maybe Carroll's comments?
I have to go listen. I didn't actually listen to the post-game presser yet, but I would guess he'll be back. But that's just kind of my gut. And
I'm pretty sure that I heard Carroll say, that he expects Russell Okung, Luke Wilson, J.R. Sweezy to all play next week.
Yeah.
That's a big one. And obviously Marshawn Lynch, everybody knows that's been reported that he'll be back with the team on Monday, tomorrow, though they don't. That doesn't mean necessarily that he's going to play, but for him to actually be back with the team, you'd expect that that means he's back to be working out with the team, practicing, and I
think Lynch will play.
I would expect that Marshawn Lynch will play. I think that if Lynch had a plan, it was that even if he was ready to go 2 weeks ago or something like that, that he was never going to come back until the playoffs. I think that he's got a focus now where he's like, any game that I play in better be a playoff game. If this is going to be my last year, or if it's not going to be my last year, I want to make sure that I'm going out on a playoff game. So I think that maybe that Lynch has been gearing up for that, though. Lynch's last game, I guess, must have been against the Arizona Cardinals when he rushed for eight carries for 42 yards and a touchdown.
Yeah.
He hasn't looked that effective this year. Kristen Michael, what did you think of Kristen Michael today? Career high 102 yards.
First of all, before I answer your question, just Googling it. It looks like Pete Carroll said he's very optimistic about getting Cam Chancellor back next week. So it looks like he'll be able to play. And then I also think that Lynch will play next week, but they'll probably not have him be like the bell cow. They'll probably kind of rotate him in still, I would guess. And I think that Kristen Michael has earned the ability to kind of get more carries. He looked really good to me. He's a little bit, like I said, tweeted today, he's a little bit feast or famine in the sense that, like if you look at his success rate, I wonder if it wouldn't be very good because he gets stuffed at the line quite a few times, but then he also has these really explosive plays where he breaks tackles and stuff like that. So it's a little bit feast or famine, but that's pretty common. And that's like what Adrian Peterson is, he'll get stuffed, and then he'll break like a 30-yard run. And that's kind of like, I think what you'll get from Kristen Michael. It's kind of his style, but overall he looked good. He looked explosive. He, obviously he did a good job protecting the football, and I thought he made some good reads, but it'll be really good to get Lynch back, I think, honestly, because I think, the offensive line really responds to Lynch. I think it's going to be an emotional boost to the team in terms of the teammates pretty much universally seem to love him. And he's just kind of, a warrior type. And I think the team will kind of rally around that. He's the kind of guy who like beats up on defenses. So overall, I think it's going to be a good thing.
Prior to this game, I think, as you said, the Cardinals, I think you would have said that they were the best team in the NFL as of right now. And I probably would have said the same thing. I'm sure I did in my eliteness rankings. And we felt like, we always live in the moment. So it's like the Cardinals look great. The Seahawks, looked like a bit of a mess against the Rams. And if someone had asked you, and I think we did talk to Sheil about it on Thursday, what do you see the playoffs, Cardinals, Panthers, and Seahawks, that going to Arizona felt like a very tough thing to do in the playoffs if you have to go into an NFC Championship game in Arizona. Seeing what you saw today, obviously, I don't think that anyone would feel comfortable predicting another blowout, but do you feel more comfortable now today, now that you've seen them match up against Arizona and beat them, a team that, like we said a couple months or 6 weeks earlier, had really, beat Seattle pretty good on its own home in terms of at least yards and points?
I mean, yeah, I think obviously after this game, I feel more comfortable about what the Seahawks are doing than I did last week because they looked pretty shitty against the Rams.
Do you think that you feel comfortable saying that the Seahawks are the best team in the NFL right now, mano a mano, neutral field?
I've said for the last, I think probably 3 or 4 weeks that if Russell Wilson continues playing the way he's playing, the Seahawks will win the Super Bowl again. So, I mean, that's kind of a ipso facto. I do think they're the best team in the NFL. As long as Russell Wilson's playing like he has in 5 of the last 6 games, yeah, I think they're the best team. But I mean, that's not to say that I think that Arizona, I don't think significantly less of Arizona after this game. I still think that Carolina's good. And, we talked about O'Shea. I think those are the 3 juggernauts in the NFC. And in the playoffs, anything can happen. But I mean, again, if Russell Wilson continues to just ball out like he is, I don't see anyone beating the Seahawks.
I mean, not Nate Silver, 538, you retweeted it just recently. Seahawks have the highest ELO rating in football going into the playoffs. For the 4th straight year, they will be the DVOA champions, barring some sort of mathematical phenomenon that I've never heard about.
Yeah, I'm sure they will be. Yeah,
they were neck and neck, less than a percentage point, and the Seahawks just beat them by 30. So I don't see how it could possibly go any other way. And ELO rating, I don't. If you want to understand ELO,
they did it in all 3 phases, right? Defense, offense, and
special teams, especially with Tyler Lockett, and we could talk about Lockett. But yeah, the Seahawks and the Cardinals, it was just it was probably the biggest defeat of any team today was the Seahawks, the way that they beat the Cardinals. And for them to do that to a team that is so good, it does feel good to have them, be going into the playoffs hotter. If you look at weighted DVOA, they'll have a higher weighted DVOA this year than they had in 2013 when they won the Super Bowl easily. So even though they're 10-6, to me, 10-6 versus 15-1, it doesn't matter when you're in the playoffs. Yeah, it's all that matters now. If the Panthers and Seahawks had the same record and Carolina just happened to get home field advantage, it's the exact same thing to me, in my eyes. That's the exact same thing. So the Seahawks should be as, on a neutral field, as good, if better. What's especially, it just feels like right now, the way that they are moving the football on offense with Wilson, as you said, it's like they make a decision, then they execute it, and almost rarely does anything ever go wrong. They just make a decision and then they execute it. And if it's 3rd down, they execute it. If it's in the red zone, they execute it. There were a few misses here in terms of field goal attempts, missed field goals, times that you thought they could get touchdowns.
Yeah, it could have been worse, huh? Could have been.
Yeah, and we've seen that a lot, and we saw that against Minnesota, I think. But it definitely felt like it could have been more of a blowout. And there were times, Russell Wilson finishes with 197 passing yards. He needed 3 yards to get 200 yards passing. If he had done that, it would have happened in all 16 games. Only a handful of quarterbacks have ever done that before. He falls just shy of that, but he does have 3 touchdowns, 24 touchdowns and 1 interception. Nobody's ever done that over 7 games before. It's quite an amazing run. How do you think? Do you feel like do you feel more confident in the offense?
No one has ever done what Russell Wilson has done over the last 7 weeks.
And he's
quarterback ever.
And he's playing with Doug Baldwin, Tyler Lockett, Jermaine Kearse. These are players that I can probably praise a little bit more today than I did a couple months ago. But this is not. This is not having Demaryius Thomas and Eric Decker and Wes Welker and the great, Julius Thomas. These guys are, not that, universal in their ability to do it. So do you feel now that you're more so, even though the defense has been really good too, do you feel more confident in the offense?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's kind of how I felt for the last couple of weeks. Although I will credit the defense really, really played well today. Against the best offense in the NFL, probably, they just completely shut them down. And that's super encouraging. When you combine it with the way the special teams play, it's like the Seahawks are one of the best teams in all three phases right now. So, I mean, again, it's like I'm not really going out on a limb saying, if the Seahawks continue to play like they're playing, they will win the Super Bowl. It's like Russell Wilson's playing better than any quarterback has ever played statistically over the last 7 weeks. It's like
let's talk about
that when they have the best scoring defense in the NFL too.
Yeah, so we know a lot of everybody's had some time to digest the win. We've talked about Wilson, we've talked about Michael. They tossed it around a little bit. Chase Kaufman caught a touchdown today.
Will
Tuipulotu, yeah, he caught a touchdown.
Bryce Brown had a rushing touchdown.
Tavares Jackson got to throw a few passes out there, and Tyler Lockett. I mean, I can't really say anything other than Arizona's punt return unit must have been failing miserably, because Tyler Lockett's been out there returning punts for all season long, and over the last couple months hasn't looked that good. And today he had 4 really good returns or 3 great returns. Yeah. I know he had 4 returns, but at least 3 of them were amazing. It's like you get excited about the special teams unit again, and you kind of do remember that this is a strength of the team when it can be, right?
Yeah, and I think tonight's game is going to be really important for next week. Obviously, I think Minnesota probably would go in and approach it, kind of carefully in the first place. But it could mean that they, there's some hidden yards out there. They could kick away from him. They could do some things to try to take him away. That could help the Seahawks field position. So that was cool, and I think that was a really big deal, because that kind of gave them some confidence and hopefully a little bit of mojo going into the playoffs. But yeah, it was just a complete win. It was really a lot of fun to watch,
Yeah. Michael Bennett gets a half sack, giving him 10 sacks on the year. Cliff Averill gets 1.5 sacks. He's up to 9. So he finished with 9 sacks on the year. Just a couple of tidbits there. But let's focus, because we do got now with the Sunday night football game complete, the Vikings. I think that I'll probably, if anybody on the field goals boards or whatever wants to call me out, call me an idiot, feel free, because I think I gave a lot of people some shit for telling me that the Vikings would win the NFC North. But here we are. The Vikings do go into Green Bay and win the NFC North, and they'll be hosting the Seahawks next week. It was, once the Seahawks won, that meant that it was Minnesota or Washington.
Yep.
After seeing Washington play today, or Minnesota, Minnesota really played some tough defense against Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. Do you feel any sort of difference between playing Minnesota or Washington? Was this the ideal situation?
Yeah, I don't like to. I guess I don't really like to root for a team that you want to play, because that feels like you're disrespectful to them. Because when you're in the playoffs, all teams are going to be good, right? So it really just comes down to matchups for me, and I think the Seahawks match up well with the Vikings. When you're gonna, the Seahawks are going to try and take away Adrian Peterson again. That's going to be their number one goal, and then you try and put the game into Teddy Bridgewater's hands. And when you look at the way Kirk Cousins is playing versus Bridgewater has improved over the last few weeks, but I think. I didn't see the final numbers, but I think he finished with 99 passing yards.
10 of 19 for 99 yards, no touchdowns, 1 interception, 45 rating.
Yeah, and so if you want to face anybody, I didn't want to face Aaron Rodgers, because he could do some crazy shit. Even though they lost the game, he led a pretty cool comeback. Almost really won the game on that last play. Could have been another one of those crazy Detroit Hail Mary things. You just don't like to play the guy who can, he's proven to be over years that he's one of the best, if not the best quarterback in the game. He's obviously had a down year, but you just don't want to go in facing that guy. You saw what the Seahawks did to Teddy Bridgewater last time they played. I think, to me, this is the best matchup that the Seahawks could have hoped for. That's not to say I think that the Vikings are bad, or the Seahawks are automatically going to kick their ass or whatever. I'm not saying that, but I think just in terms of personnel matchups, I like this one the most.
Well, I won't make you say it, Danny. I'll be the one to say it.
Say it last time, and you were right.
I'll be the one to say it, and we should see if maybe we bring back Arif, because I know that when we had Arif last time, I said, "Look, man, I don't mean to be disrespectful to you, but I don't respect your team," and that's how I felt. That's how I still feel today. And I'll be the one to say it, because I'm not like worried necessarily. I know
we don't have any control over the outcome of the game. Let's be
right, and I'm not worried necessarily. Here's the thing about playoffs games: we've seen it in 2012, 2013, 2014. We're going to see it in 2015 when we went to go play. When the Seahawks, I'm sorry, we're not on the team. When the Seahawks went to go play the Washington Redskins in 2012, every single Washington fan would tell you that on their 7-game winning streak and Robert Griffin III, they were unstoppable. It was stupid that you thought you were going to win this game and blah, blah, blah. And that's all we heard for the whole week. And sure enough, Washington really didn't have much of a chance to win that game. Then you go into like 2000, and I don't know how many teams felt a lot of confidence. You go to 2013 Super Bowl and Denver Broncos, and everyone's picking the Broncos. And we're saying over here, like, look, you don't understand. Like, this is what I'm saying is that they're going to eliminate Peyton Manning. Look at everything that they've done against every great quarterback that they've played in the last 2 years. They're going to eliminate Peyton Manning. So if your defense can't step up and your defense is not good like it is now, that's why you're going to lose the game. Super Bowl was a blowout. 2014, you're going up against even the Carolina Panthers. You're going up against the Panthers, and they've won 5 straight games. And everyone's talking about Carolina, about how they're coming in and they're strong. And, you just don't understand how good the Panthers are. And the Panthers don't really stand much of a chance in that game either. And you hear it every single week. This year, it's going to be the Minnesota Vikings, and how the Minnesota Vikings aren't the same team that played you in week 13 when they didn't have Harrison Smith and Anthony Barr, and they didn't have these players and all that. And that's great. Have those players. Play a better defense. That doesn't stop the fact that you will not be able to score more than 14 points against the Seahawks with any of the weapons that you have, and it's been proven over and over again. So that's why I'm saying, like, the Minnesota Vikings, it feels great that you feel great. But, you look at DVOA going into this week, they were 14th on offense and 16th on defense, and the Seahawks are going to be the number 1 team in DVOA. So I'm not saying that the Seahawks absolutely will win this game, because I would not say that they'll absolutely win every game, because obviously that is, a fool's goal is to just be out there predicting for sure, guaranteeing wins.
Right.
But 91% of the time, Seattle should win this game. That's
91.
just how much better they are.
Where'd you get the 91 number?
I mean, where does Stephen Hawking get his numbers? They just appear.
No, I mean, I do think the Seahawks are a better team than the Vikings, and especially with the way that they're playing right now. So, again, yeah, it's a good matchup for Seattle, I think. Obviously it's another 10 a.m. game, and it's going to be cold. So those are some of the factors that you have to think about. But yeah, I like the matchup, and I think it's going to be, I think it's favorable for the Seahawks, but there's a reason they play the games. A lot of weird shit happens in the playoffs. So, yeah, I'll be going in thinking the Seahawks will win, but they have to keep playing the way that they're playing.
If we go back, and like we said, it was 38-7. Russell Wilson, this was this starts the Russell Wilson streak, 21 of 27, 274 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Excuse me, this was the 3rd game in the Russell Wilson streak. Thomas Rawls obviously won't be available, but they did rush for, almost 200 yards in that game against the Vikings. Tyler Lockett, 7 catches for 90 yards. He really started to click in that game. Doug Baldwin caught 2 touchdowns. On the other side of the ball, which is really going to be the key for Minnesota, because I don't have any doubts that the Seahawks will be able to put up, 20, 21 points, something like that at the very least, I think, for the Seahawks against Minnesota. But really the key here is, Teddy Bridgewater, 17 of 28 for 118 yards, no touchdowns and 1 interception in the game. Like we said, very similar to the performance he had against Green Bay. But the other thing, Adrian Peterson, 8 carries for 18 yards against the Seahawks. He was a little bit banged up, but he should be good to go. But when he faces a tough defense, a tough defense can shut someone down. That's why I always try and pick defense over offense if it's a more complete. If you don't have a really great quarterback that, and a lot of great weapons, like even with the way that you saw Arizona today with the quarterback they have and the 3 receivers that they have, didn't get anything going in the first half today. Teddy Bridgewater, he finished the season with 14 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. That's over 16 games. This is the least potent offensive passing attack in the NFL, which means they really have to rely on one guy. And if you shut down that one guy, I think there's a good chance that Minnesota is going to score something around the lines of 9 or 10 points. Do you have any sort of thoughts about the 10 a.m. thing?
Well, I mean, I just think it's funny that the one Pacific Coast team has to play the early game, the only early game. But whatever. I don't think it really matters, to be honest. I think the Seahawks are past that. It's not like a big deal. They've kind of figured out a way to plan around making that so it feels like a big deal.
Does it feel like more of a big deal that if they win, they have to go play at 10 a.m. in Carolina?
The one in Carolina will probably be worse because they have to go a lot. Well, they have to go further, but I really don't think it's that big of a deal for this team anymore. I don't think they think of it really anymore. So, yeah, I don't think in this case it's a big deal, but it is annoying. It's really just, to me, it's just annoying. It's like the typical NFL, they're like, they really don't want the Seahawks back in the playoffs or in the Super Bowl.
I mean, it would be, to push a thing where it's like, I think the NFL sees fans get bored if they see the same teams going to the championship games. Yeah. I think, they look at baseball and they think that fans become disinterested when they see the Yankees always in the playoffs and constantly in the World Series. I think, the same thing happens in the NBA where, there is a good chance that the Warriors and Cavs will be in the NBA Finals, and people could have told you that a year ago. And I think that the NFL, which is the most successful sports franchise, professional sports league in America, this is how they see it. And I don't know if you can say that it is causation, but there are certainly different teams in the Super Bowl most every year, and they are very successful. So I think fans do become less interested. That being said, not a lot of surprises. The Broncos and Peyton Manning are the number 1 seed. The Patriots are the number 2 seed. The Bengals are going to the playoffs for the 5th straight year. Seahawks are back. Packers are back. Panthers are back for the 3rd time in 4 years. There's not a whole lot of surprises. Did you feel any sort of surprises today as seeds were made and the Steelers come in over the Jets?
Yeah, I was actually surprised the Steelers made it. Not that I think the Steelers are bad, but I just didn't think the Jets would blow it like that. Although, it's always crazy when it's an in-division game. The Bills obviously were looking to play spoiler. So that was kind of surprising. The Jets played a lot worse than they normally would play, I think. And I had more faith in them than I think I maybe should have. But yeah, so that was the big surprise to me. Obviously, the Patriots lost to the Dolphins. That was pretty surprising. Patriots, I think, are 2-4 in the last 6 games. Or don't quote me on that, but I think they've really struggled since they started really, really strong. No, they're not 2-4 in the last. That'd be wrong. But
they are 2-4 in the last 6 games.
Is that true? Oh, okay. What?
Have some confidence. Look.
Well, I was like, have they lost 4 games? I can't remember.
They're 12-4. That's why they fell out of the number 1 seed.
All right. Well, there you go. So I don't know. That's kind of crazy. Obviously, there's a ton of injuries and things like that, but man, they just haven't been playing very good. Well, everyone kind of thought they were the juggernaut, going to go 16-0, and they've obviously fallen off very hard. So.
Still, it's still going to be probably one of the favorites. If you still got Tom Brady at home in the divisional round, it'll probably be. I don't know if I necessarily believe the Broncos will make the AFC Championship. I mean, it all depends on the health of Andy Dalton and who sort of comes out of those first rounds. It's going to be interesting. It's definitely a wide open AFC this year. Yeah,
it's crazy. The Broncos went from almost being last week. They had the potential of missing the playoffs. Now they're the number 1 seed.
And today they still could have been the 6th seed.
Yeah,
they could have been that, and they went to the 1 seed.
Pretty crazy stuff. I saw before the game started early this morning on Red Zone. They said there was 512 different scenarios that could have played out, or something like that, in the AFC before the game started. So that's pretty weird.
So let's look just quickly at Minnesota, the winning teams that they've played this year. They go week 4 at Denver. They lose 23-20, so they keep it close with Denver. At that time, obviously, Peyton Manning not playing so well, but still they do go to Denver against a good defense, lose 23-20. The next week, they beat the Kansas City Chiefs 16-10. That was the last time the Chiefs lost. Then you've got the Green Bay Packers in Week 11. They lose 30-13. Then you've got the Seahawks in Week 13. They lose 38-7. Then they go to Arizona in Week 14. They lose 23-20. Then this week against Green Bay, of course, they win 20-13. That's my thing. Is I always like to see, what kind of experience they have against good teams. It seems like Minnesota has been a little bit competitive in some of those games. Obviously, beating the Packers and the Chiefs. I just don't see Teddy Bridgewater winning a playoff game. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and I mean that goes to what I was saying earlier, where it's like if you want to face any of the AFC or the NFC quarterbacks right now, I think it's definitely Bridgewater. If you want to, the Seahawks are going to try and put it in his hands. So I think you got to feel good about that compared to any of the other guys right now. Kirk Cousins, a couple of weeks ago, he probably would have said something different. He's been playing really, really well. So right now, I think. Well, his numbers are really, really good anyway.
His numbers are really good, and I appreciate that. And he's eating up all those bad defenses, and I don't know if everybody is necessarily trying that hard. If you're the Dallas Cowboys, and the Dallas Cowboys, I don't know how much, they're putting out their best product there in the secondary. But, yeah, I mean, like Kirk Cousins is doing everything asked of him. I still have a feeling that the Redskins are going to regret the contract that they inevitably give him, but that's just my 2 cents. I could be wrong. I just don't. It's like when you have something, and it's just I'm not ready to judge it yet because he hasn't proven it against the competition that I want him to. It's like if you're looking for, say, a quarterback in the NFL draft, and he's coming from a Division II school, it doesn't matter what his numbers are to me. So I still think that Kirk Cousins is playing Division II ball. And, I want to see him do it against better competition. This week, he's got the Green Bay Packers, not the best NFL defense, but, if he's got a home game, a playoff game against Aaron Rodgers, okay, this is his first test. And if he passes this test, then I'll take a closer look at Kirk Cousins as someone to take seriously. Sure. If he wins that game, then they go to Arizona. Then that's a huge test. That is the SATs, and then we can again, start to discuss Kirk Cousins. If we're looking one step ahead, one of the benefits, I guess, somewhat of being the number 6 seed is that that if you win, where you're going to go. So if the Seahawks win, they can only go to Carolina. It's a team that beat them early in the year, 24-27. I think it was a little bit different than that, 27-23.
I think it was 4.
Yeah, I think it was a 4-point game. So 27-23. They, every time I tweet about the Panthers or don't tweet about the Panthers, I'm getting tweets from Panthers fans telling me about how the Panthers beat the Seahawks.
You're the most hated person in Panther Nation.
I've taken on Carolina's entire fan base. But all they want to talk about is wins and losses, and that's fine. And, you beat us, blah, blah, blah. And I'll tell you the same thing that everyone told Seahawks fans before 2013. You can tell when someone's only won a regular season championship. Talk to me when you've won a Super Bowl championship, then we can discuss it. But right now, I still have no faith that even if you get past the Seahawks or whoever, if the Seahawks don't win, even if you get past the divisional round, you still got 2 more games to play against teams better that you have played all year long. So I'm still not sure that I don't believe the Carolina Panthers won the Super Bowl, but that would be the second destination. The Carolina didn't have too much of a problem with the Bucs today, 38-10. Cam Newton's going to win the MVP. He goes 21 of 26, 293 yards, 2 touchdowns, rushes for 2 touchdowns. I mean, that's probably why I got a shitload of tweets today. But Carolina,
buddy.
Do you think that we don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but again, we don't control the fate of what happens to the Seahawks. Only, that's up to them. Carolina in round 2, is that more or less desirable than Arizona in round 2?
Yeah, I don't know. I think they're pretty close, honestly. Before today, I thought Arizona was the better team. So I think you'd rather go to Carolina. You've proven multiple times that you can win in Carolina. I think the Arizona has a slight advantage over Carolina because they're a division team, so they know the Seahawks a little bit better. Though Carolina has been sort of a de facto division team the last couple of years in the way that they've played them so many times.
And they'll play again next year.
Hooray!
Hooray!
Yeah, but I mean, I think I'd rather go to Carolina. But again, it's I don't know. I mean, it's pretty close. I don't really have a strong.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really matter. If they win, they are going to Carolina. So
yeah. So
that's the way that it is, and it only just gives me. I want to see the Seahawks win for all the types of reasons that you want to see a team win the playoff game, but there's so much more to it. I've been waiting for months. I feel like to have this set up in a playoff game between the Seahawks and Panthers. It's Russell Wilson versus Cam Newton. I mean, this can really be the game that makes or breaks me as a human being.
No, you've set this game up to be something really fun, though. Like it's gonna be like a crazy ass rivalry, basically just because of you.
If the Panthers win and Cam Newton has a great game, which he's never had against the Seahawks and never will, but if he does, then all of a sudden I'm going to be the one that has to log off Twitter. If the Seahawks win and Russell Wilson has a great game in Carolina, I'm going to hear crickets from all of Panther Nation. Nothing. And that's fucking great. So that is
definitely embrace this, and I appreciate that.
Yeah. So I think that'll be a great setup. Hopefully the Seahawks don't have any problems with Minnesota. Like we said, 38-7 a month ago. Anything can happen in the playoffs and anything can happen outside the playoffs. But, it's going to be, the more analyzing you do of the game, I think that it's pretty obvious that without Teddy Bridgewater being able to do anything, and he won't, then you can just focus on Adrian Peterson. It's really, I mean, the only touchdown they scored was Cordarrelle Patterson. So, and we saw what Patterson did today against the Packers. There's just not a lot to.
Yes. Oh no.
Yeah, it's just what I just don't. It's going to be tough for Minnesota to win. 91% is the official chances of the Seahawks to win the game.
All right.
Should we tell the listeners about the donating or the, what would you call it?
Yeah, it's like I don't know what it's called. We set up a thing where you can donate if you like the show. We have to pay for hosting, and then we would like to get better equipment and all that. So if you want to sponsor our show, essentially, we're going to set up a way for you guys to do that.
We'll put the link here in the page at fieldgoals.com for patreon.com. That's what we're going with at first, to try and see how this works out. This is our first time asking for donations, and we're going to see how it works. And my little pitch to you would just be that if you like the show and you want to see the show continue to get better, then if you can donate $1, $2, $3, $5, I think the way Patreon sets up is that it's a monthly donation. The only other way that it would be is if it was like, say, a pay for podcast, and we want to put out a bunch of podcasts. So I think that, what you've seen in the last year, in 2015, we did we did 50 episodes at least of Real in the Field Goals. We did another 16 episodes of the Instant Reaction podcast, maybe 17 with the preseason mixed in there. We had bonus episodes. Danny and Jackson did the Deep Balls podcast 17 times. Me and Rob Staten have done 3,000 NFL mock draft, some 18 times. So, we put out about 100 podcasts in total last year, and we're doing it with some pretty shady equipment. So
right.
The fact that if we can just get some better equipment and make the show sound better, I think that'll bring in more listeners, and the more listeners we get, the better guests, and the more, unique guests, I guess, that we can get to pitch ourselves to some of those potential guests that are out there is something that we want to think about, as well as just hosting fees, because if we're able to, have this show pay for itself, then we can put out more shows. So if you like the show,
because we kind of do this separate from the whole SB Nation family. So
totally,
we pay for our hosting and any equipment that we need. So it's all basically because we like doing it. And so hopefully if you do enjoy the show, and if you want us to continue it and continue to build on it and get better, like Kenny said, like if the sound quality, it could be a lot better. So
This is a labor of love.
Yeah, basically that's what I'm getting at. So if you want to sponsor the show, that would be awesome, and we would really appreciate it.
Yeah, and I think we can get there. So what I think is with the more listeners that we have now through the playoffs, it's only going to get grow more and more. And then as soon as the Seahawks season ends, whenever that is, we won't stop doing the show. Reeling the Field Goals will continue. We have not missed a single week since starting this last February. Every single week, Reeling the Field Goals has been here, and for the last 4 months, it's been 2 times per week. So that's a lot of work, and we just want to keep doing it. So if you can donate, that would be great. And I think that I said in the page as well that any donation of like $5 a month will get a shout out. If you want us to say something or put a tweet out there, Twitter handle or something like that, or whatever, I think that's coming in at $5 a month. We'll see how many of those we get. But that's at patreon.com, and we'll put the link in the fieldgoals.com link. And I guess maybe we can put one in the iTunes. I'm not sure. We'll check that out.
Yeah, we'll look.
But yeah, that's it for that. And that means that this Thursday we'll be back with another episode of Reeling the Field Goals. Maybe we'll have a reef. Maybe we'll see what else is out there as we see the Seahawks preview the Seahawks and the Vikings for their wild card matchup. It's another playoff game. Been very blessed to get so many playoff games in these last 4 years with Russell Wilson and Pete Carroll. One of the most successful 4-year spans that I think has happened. We'll see. It all depends on how these playoffs go, I guess. Reeling the Film Goals. You got any film news?
I watched a movie called Beginners with some guy that I can't remember his name. Ewan McGregor. I thought it was pretty good. So you can check that out. It's basically about a guy who, well, you can just look it up. It's a little sappy, a little romantic, but it's also kind of funny.
Okay.
Then I also watched this movie called Down. What is it? Best Man Down. I was trawling Netflix recently, some pretty bad movies, but it was pretty good. It was about a guy who dies he's the best man at a wedding, and he dies after the wedding, and his friends have to kind of put together his life, and it was actually pretty funny at times.
Interesting. Best Man Down. That's something to
terrible recommendations by the way.
I saw the new Sherlock the Abominable Bride.
How was that?
It was very good. It was a little, I guess, cheesy at times, more so than regular, even in the regular past, because there is some like time period piece stuff about it, which I liked how Sherlock was modern. But at the end of the day, you're still getting really quality mystery and acting type stuff. So the new Sherlock didn't disappoint. And special shout out to Making a Murderer, which will consume you for a day or 2 days, however long it takes you to watch 10 hours of this documentary. But usually it doesn't take more than a day. Have you heard of this, Making a Murderer?
Yeah, I've heard about it a lot. Considering not watching it because I figure it's probably going to piss me off a lot.
It is pretty upsetting. But I'll say that there are things that maybe you can do or try to do once you're finished watching it.
Right. It
is nice to be informed, I guess. Not really. I mean, you still feel pretty hopeless. But at the same time, and it is really well made. And, I think that these real true, I've always been a big fan of the true crime story stuff like Dateline, and I felt like I was always the only one, or that the only people that I could relate to it with were like 70-year-olds. But
no, I always like that stuff too. Actually, it's interesting.
They got the new season of Serial out right now.
I just have seen so many people that are like, "God, Making a Murderer fucking pisses me off." I'm like, do I want that? Do I want to be like that? I guess
there's a lot of twists and turns, and it really is an emotional experience.
I've heard it's really good though.
It is good. It's kind of got a couple funny parts.
Probably better than the movies I wasted my time watching.
No, there is no such thing as wasting your time on movies, as long as you're doing movies.
Yes.
Go check out Sports on Earth. I've got a couple articles up right now with a recap of the Seahawks game, as well as an article about the 49ers firing Jim Tomsula. That just was posted in the last 30 minutes or so. Tomsula fired. My stance that the 49ers have been setting this up all year long. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, he seemed to be like the fall boy / bridge coach. And yeah, I mean, it just kind of seemed like he was set up to fail. Really, really good situation for him.
Yeah. Yeah, it was pretty messed up, because if they hired somebody like Dan Quinn, for example, they couldn't fire him after 1 year, even though they knew they were going to go 4-11 or 4-12 or 5-11 or something like that. They couldn't fire. They just wanted someone that would take one bad year and then start over.
Yeah. So
it was really bad on that thing.
Lands there though, for sure.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see. I think Chip Kelly is available. I mean, there's
Chip Kelly, Sean Payton apparently.
Yeah, Sean Payton. I mean,
it's kind of scary to me because I like Sean Payton, but
Sean Payton would obviously be an upgrade, but I don't know. It's weird, and obviously, Mike Pettin and Ray Farmer got fired. All had some like articles ready to go in case that these moves happened. I think Tom Coughlin could be going. There are
sounds like he might.
Chuck Pagano reportedly.
Mm-hmm.
Mike McCoy.
You say Pettin?
I said Pettin, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I think that takes care of most of them. Yeah, that should take care of most of the guys, though. I still think that Mike McCarthy, after losing tonight, might get fired. I don't know why more people aren't talking about Mike McCarthy possibly being fired. I said that if they lost tonight and lost in the wild card round, it was almost a guarantee, in my opinion. You look at the way they lost the NFC Championship last year. You look at the fact that they have gone 2-4 in the playoffs with Aaron Rodgers in his prime since their Super Bowl win. There's plenty of reason. I mean, I'll take credit for being the first to say it, so I'll take credit there.
All right.
Mike McCarthy should be on the hot seat, and I think that he could be fired if they don't win maybe 2 playoff games at this point since they lost. So that's it for that. That's neither here nor there. Seahawks, Vikings next Sunday, 10 a.m. Get up early. Don't party too hard on Saturday. And then come back for the first Instant Reaction Field Goals Playoff podcast. Hopefully previewing the next week's game. Hopefully talking about a win. But if not, wrapping up 2015 in a button. So please check out that donation page. Ask any questions if you have any questions about the donating. Subscribe on iTunes. Follow on Twitter at Field Goals, Kenneth Arthur S. And that's it. Do you have anything else you want to say to your loyal fans, Danny? We call them fannies, by the way.
Nope, that's about all. I'm looking forward to next week. #
Fanny Kelly if you're a fanny. And come back on Thursday. We'll have more, and then if you donate, it'll get better. Goodbye.